Hello, my name is Nan Britt. I'd like to welcome you to the SCIP webinar training. SCIP stands for Spectrum Camp Inclusion Project, and this is brought to you by the Spectrum Autism Support Group, which is located in Gwinnett County, Georgia. And this is really a guide to help camp programs welcome and include individuals with autism and other special needs. And I am personally involved with Spectrum as a special education teacher for children with autism. So I appreciate your time of tuning in to this training. We hope that we can give you some valuable tools to use for children that come to your camp program that have autism. Also, to give you the why, behind some of the characteristics or behaviors you may see. And then, as always, most importantly, we like to give you more information of what parents are going through, of what families are going through, and the families that your program may serve, what their needs are, and so just to have more of a sensitivity there to the families that do live in our community. So we appreciate your time, and so we're going to go ahead and get started. The first question I'd like for us to ask is, what does your community look like? And many times it's not intentional, but we're just unaware of the needs that are around us if we have not personally been affected by a disability or a diagnosis in our own home. Sometimes we're just unaware of what families are really going through. And statistics tell us from the CDC that 1 in 6 children have some type of developmental delay or developmental disability. So we quickly know that there may already be children that are attending your program, whether this is a summer camp or an after-school program, that do have some type of developmental delay. Many times families may not have shared that with you. They're just hoping that their child can do well in your program. Many times it's from fear of rejection, that their child may not be allowed to participate in your program. But these are what the statistics tell us of 1 in 6. And we're reminded that developmental disabilities might range from very mild, such as a speech and language delay, or it could be more severe, such as an intellectual disability. And these are a group of conditions that affect maybe a physical impairment in a child. It may be a learning impairment, language impairment, or affect their behavioral emotional areas. This next image just gives us a great picture to look at and think about. If we're picturing the group of kids we already serve that come to our program, but also picturing the group of families that live in the community around us. And we're reminded that a lot of families are dealing with different intellectual disabilities that have a variety of ranges there. Some families are dealing with genetic disorders. Many times they may have received this news while the mother was pregnant and gave birth. We know many families of children with Down syndrome, and we know that things just may not have gone as planned for many families, and they're working through that, and they're learning how to navigate that in their community, whether it's through the school system, through their church, their local place of worship, and then also through camp programs like yours. They're wanting their child to be able to participate in a program and have those same experiences as maybe their siblings or neighbors around them, and they're really navigating this new world with their child that does have this special need. Autism spectrum disorders, what we're talking about today, we know many families have this diagnosis. We know many adults, as well as children who struggle with ADHD and various learning disabilities. And in a group of people, we know there's a variety of physical disabilities. There's various disorders such as seizures that families have walked through. So I think this just helps us get the perspective of the community that is around your program and the different families that you have the opportunity to serve. Today, what we're going to talk about specifically is autism spectrum disorders. I'd like to give you some of the characteristics that come with that diagnosis of autism, and then also some tools and strategies that you can use for children in your program that can really set them up to be successful and for you to be successful as a staff. People with autism have persistent difficulties across three main areas, and those areas are their social skills, their behavioral, emotional skills, and their communication skills. And if you think about it, this really can cause some difficulty. We require all of these areas to function every day and to kind of interact with the world around us. So you can see how this can cause a lot of difficulties and deficit areas for people with autism. And it really is the way that their brain is structured. They take in information differently, and and information goes out differently. It is the fastest growing neurological developmental disorder. I know many of us have been affected by autism, whether you have a family member with autism or a neighbor, someone in your group of friends. We most definitely have probably read about it or seen a news report about autism in the last few years. We know that it is very prevalent. It does occur in all racial, ethnic, and socioeconomic groups. And abilities can range from very gifted, very high IQs to severely challenged. And this is important, I think, that you'll see throughout the rest of the presentation. But children that come into your program, you will meet children that are nonverbal. They don't communicate verbally. They may communicate more with pictures, with sign language. They may take you by the hand and lead you to show you what they need through gestures. You may also meet a child with Asperger's syndrome or high-functioning autism that engages you in just a fascinating conversation about their specific interests that they know a lot of information about. But you may see that this child is rather good at communicating with adults, but really has a hard time communicating with other kids and has that deficit with their social skills. So you will see this range of autism through your program. It does affect 1 out of 68 children, and boys are 5 times more likely to have autism than girls. And as we continue on and we kind of take a look at camp inclusion, that's what we're talking about, is ways that being open to the idea of including children into our programs that may have different needs than what we are used to seeing, and just getting a better perspective of the needs that are around us in our community. Many times programs, whether it's churches, schools, after school camp programs, summer camp programs, recreational departments, they may not have thought about inclusion, and a lot of times it's because it can be unpredictable. It can be inconsistent. It can make us feel uncomfortable at times. But, I'd like to applaud you today for tuning in to this training, because you are showing that, you have a desire to learn, you have an openness and a willingness to accept these families and to serve these children in your programs. And so we thank you for partnering with us. And a lot of it has to do with being prepared. And so to take away some of these feelings, to take away the unpredictableness and maybe that uncomfortable feeling that we get when we don't feel prepared. So we hope that this really is practical for you today. Getting started and thinking towards a plan of camp inclusion in your program, 2 great questions to ask yourself and to ask your staff is, do I believe every child in our community should have the same opportunity to participate in our program and what we're doing? And I think we all would agree, well, yes, every child really should have that same opportunity. If their parents want them to be involved in this sport or in this after-school program or whatever it may be that you're offering, sure, we do believe they should have that same opportunity. And then the second question is, do I believe every child has the potential to show progress in our program? And I think this is a really important question to keep in front of your planning, because we're not talking about for every child to master this goal, or to show mastery of a skill of a sport. But we're just asking, does every child have the potential to show progress? And I think we would all agree, if we spent some time thinking about that question, that yes, I think every child can show progress, in very small ways or in very big ways. And I think especially after this training, it will help guide you in the ways that you can make that possible for children. And so these are two great questions to ask as you get started and as you think towards a camp inclusion program. Some of the practical things to get out of the way is just thinking through your staff, providing training for them, such as a webinar like today. This is a great way to jumpstart your staff and to get everyone on the same page with what we're talking about. A good idea is to recognize staff who show interest. I think at any staff, a recreational staff, a children's staff, an after school staff, you're going to have some volunteers and some staff people that you can tell that is their heart. They have a compassion towards children with special needs. That's who they end up working with many times in a group. And so these are the volunteers to start with, to ask if they could be a part of this, a part of the special needs team for your program. You want to take a look at your schedule, what you have, what you typically do in your schedule for your program. And many times the problem, that the mistake that we end up making, is we try to fit a child into the program, the existing program we have. We try to fit him into the schedule we already have. And I'd like to encourage you to change your perspective and kind of think of it differently, that we may need to modify our program to conform to what the child needs. And so this is where that takes us back to why a lot of programs may not take the effort to do this. But again, we've asked ourselves those questions. I do believe that every child should have the opportunity, and I do believe they show the potential of making progress. So we can make those small changes of modifying our schedule to maybe what a child might need that is signed up for your program. You want to take a look at your groups, maybe your camp program groups. How do you typically run camp? And for a child that is signed up to attend your program, you may want to organize your groups and ages appropriately. These are just, again, some of those pre-planning ideas that may help reduce a lot of stress among your staff and really set the child up to be successful. You may have a child that is in fourth grade, but developmentally he might fit better in the third grade group. You can make some of those adjustments with age. You may have a group of campers that have some very nurturing campers in that group. You know them from previous experiences, and you can think, wow, this would be a great group for this child to be in. I know that these kids will take care of him. They're very nurturing. They're going to help him be introduced to camp. So think through those details. Also plan your physical space. We know this. Sometimes there are children who come that may be in a wheelchair. They may have leg braces. They may need crutches, require crutches that they use. They may not be able to navigate stairs very well. And so thinking through these details ahead of time, again, will really help that camp program run smoothly and flow if you've thought through some of these details that you could modify and change before camp even starts. Okay, in getting started and you have a child that is signed up for camp, I encourage you to connect with this family. I encourage you to make a phone call. I know with technology, many of us just don't like making phone calls. It's uncomfortable. Sometimes we would just rather send that email. But I promise you, making a phone call will go such a long way with a family, and it will make them feel comfortable. It will make them feel welcome. They will appreciate that you took the time. But even more so, it will make you feel prepared and you feel comfortable um, for this child to come into your program. You will bypass so many uh, situations you might find yourself in that may be meltdowns and maybe behaviors. You will bypass so many of those if you can make that phone call to get a lot of information from the parent. Um, you will hear me say this it's probably several times throughout this presentation, but parents know best. Mom is the expert, and so we want to establish communication with them from the beginning. To ask them, do you have any questions? Go ahead and establish that communication, because it will just make the experience so much more successful. You will also know the expectations, and I'd like to add this here. Many times we may be preparing the child and have goals for the child that might be very different from what the parent wants. And so when you talk to the parent, let's ask them, what are your expectations for your child in this program? What would you like for them to get out of participating in our camp program? And this will be so helpful because it will get you on the same page. The parent might say, you know what? I just want my son to meet a friend this week. I would love for him to just have some positive interaction with other kids, for him to maybe come home and know the name of one friend in his group. That she may say, I'm not very concerned about his skill level and how much he participates in soccer or the sports you're doing. I just want him to really work on his social skills. Well, you know what? That really helps you in planning. It helps you not to be so focused on getting this little guy to participate in soccer, but it does help you know, and your volunteers to know, that this mom really is looking for you to help him interact with his peers. But you may find out from another parent that they say, we have really been working on his motor coordination, and I would love for him to, learn how to kick a ball this week. I don't mind it. It's okay if he's not going to learn all the rules of soccer or baseball or football, but I want him to learn this one skill. That is so helpful for you to know going into that week, and it helps you point all of your energy towards that skill, and you have met that parent's expectation. What can happen when you don't communicate is that camp can think your camp staff can think that they are doing an awesome job that week, but the parent may still be disappointed because the expectations aren't being met. So get that out of the way at the beginning. What are your expectations for this week? And that is going to help you tremendously. Just to add, you may want to include an additional form for this child so that you get some more information that you may not obtain from other campers. That may be helpful for you, especially if they have a history of seizures, or if they have a history of food allergies that you need to be aware of. And, individualize this information. So you may ask for more specific details, such as what are those interests that this child really likes that we can use at camp to help him enjoy his time more. So those were some ways of getting you started, having you think about your staff, things to put in place to be proactive before your program even begins, connecting with the parent, establishing what their expectations are. So moving forward, I'd like to just talk with you about autism and the characteristics you might encounter. It doesn't fit every single child, but in general, many times these are characteristics you'll see. What to expect on that first day of camp. Many times we know that children with autism have difficulty with change. We know that it's very hard for them to generalize skills to new places. So what they know at home as their routine, even what they know as their lunch, their ham sandwich that they eat at home every day with mom, it is even hard for them to generalize that mom has packed that same sandwich for lunch today at camp. it's very difficult for them to know that things stay the same, even if you're in different locations. We know it's very difficult for them to handle stress, and they don't know how to handle stress many times, and that's what leads you to those behaviors. We know that behaviors are due to lack of communication. So I'd like for you to remember that children with autism do have a significant breakdown in communication. And so whether they are verbal or nonverbal, many times when we see behaviors, it is due to not being able to get out what they really want to say, what they really want to tell us. We know that they're very sensitive to sensory input. So camp is a brand new place, and there's going to be a lot of new noises. And so I think those are some important things to know walking into the front doors of camp. These are some things that the child is already dealing with. So one way that you can plan for this is to provide a schedule. You may already have a schedule, I'm sure, with your camp groups, something you follow. You may just find that you need to individualize a schedule for a child with autism. This doesn't have to be anything fancy, but the beauty of camp is typically you know this child is coming. You've already talked with the parent, and so you do have a little bit of time to prepare. And so you may want to ask the parent, are they good readers? Because I'm going to make them a schedule, and then you'll know. You may simply just need to write out the camp schedule, and the camper can read it. But the parent might tell you, at school he does really well using a picture schedule. And then that's when you could take pictures, with your phone of all your camp activity rotations. You print it off. You may laminate it just for durability. And you have that schedule ready to go. And so this helps kids know start to finish, especially that first day of camp. That concept of time is very difficult. So they don't know when mom and dad are coming back for them. They don't know if they're going to be with you for 10 hours in this brand new place. And so naturally, that causes a lot of stress in them. So a schedule helps them know when lunch is coming and when parent pickup is coming and when they will be finished with this day. It tells them, that a motivating activity is coming next, possibly after a more unpreferred activity. We can use this to our advantage. A child with autism, it's going to be hard for them trying new experiences. And so we can use that schedule to let them know, hey, I need you to, we're going to have soccer and we're going to practice kicking the ball. But guess what? Next is snack. And they know that favorite activity is coming next. And we really can use that to our advantage to help them get through and be more compliant with us, maybe when they're doing something that's not really their favorite thing to do at camp. And so, I've given you some pictures. One note to add, let's not put the time on our schedule. Because we know how camp goes. It's rare that we might actually leave the room at 10:15 on the dot. If we put the time on the schedule, this will be a source of stress for kids with autism. So just simply list the order of your day. You can have the child cross it off their list. If it's a picture schedule, they might take that picture with them and leave it there to signify, we finished this activity. Let's move to the next one. Okay, what to expect? Some other characteristics you may encounter. Children with autism do have intense or unusual interest. This is often really good to know, again, with that parent information, because truthfully, this is going to be a way you connect with the child. And so that first day of camp, when stress levels are heightened a little bit, this child may tell you and talk a long time about this specific interest. Many times it's very fascinating. I think you will leave camp just really enjoying interacting with these kids with autism. They are fascinating. individuals. And, many times it can be something common like sports or space. It can be a very unusual interest like models of vacuum cleaners. And truthfully, and so you find out what it is and you ask those questions, and that will establish a lot of trust and a close bond with you, truthfully, in those first few days. You're going to find they have difficulty changing topics and listening to others. This is part of those social skills they're really working on. They may want to talk only about that interest. And so your staff, being trained, such as like this presentation today, or in your staff meetings that you may have every morning before camp starts, be reminded of ways to help them be included into the camp groups. You can use that specific interest. A lot of kids will find it very cool, that Josh knows so much about space, or even insects, or dinosaurs, or cars. And you can incorporate that into your camp group and really kind of make them a hero, and in a neat way of him being able to tell the kids information about this topic. They're going to have a hard time understanding others' point of view. People with autism lack theory of mind, and that's a big word for understanding that other people have different points of view, different opinions, different perspectives than you do. So in their world, everything is very scripted and it's very black and white. So many times they have a hard time disagreeing, and this is where you come in, though. You're expecting that, and you can redirect the conversation and kind of work through that off to the side in helping this child, really connect with other peers. We can expect that they will have a difficult time connecting facial expressions with emotions. So if we think about ourselves, our emotions change so many times throughout a day, and it's connected to what we say. They will have a difficult time at camp with this. If you are disappointed, if you're frustrated, they will have a difficult time picking up on that you feel that way, and it may be connected to their behavior or connected to the behavior of the group. You may have an excited, happy, joyful expression. Again, there may be a delay there of connecting that has to do with being proud or someone achieve goal. So be aware that these things, these issues are there, but ways that we can help and what to plan for are, we want to incorporate those known interests and skills like we just talked about. We want to help mediate conversation between peers. So we know going into camp, you might have some awkward moments in your camp group. And so kind of get out ahead of that and be ready for it. Something great, and I've provided this visual here, to have some filler questions. It makes it less awkward for everyone in the group, and you may be sitting at a group with your camp group at lunch, and you have the child with autism read some of these, but you may turn it into a game. You have another camper read a question, and it just facilitates conversation. Kids with autism may not come up with that question on their own. And so that's what we're there for. We're there to help them provide that practice or a script. Again, you may feed them some questions to ask another friend. Incorporate drama or role playing. This is so good for kids with autism. And actually, a lot of research has come out to say that this is a great way to practice social skills. And we can always do this in our camp groups of what would we do, in this situation, and kind of talk about it before you go out to the field, maybe for soccer practice or a kickball game. What should we do if someone kicks the ball? And as a group, you talk through it. And that truthfully helps every child. You just can't get enough social skills practice, truthfully, as a child, but it specifically is helping and targeted for the child with autism, because we know that he or she will need that kind of help. So we want to anticipate warning signs so that we might have to provide a break. And so, again, knowing that this child is signed up for camp, um, we have all this information from parents, and we know some of these situations may be difficult. That allows us to anticipate those warning signs, before a meltdown happens. We can give that child a break. We can, let him stay back in the room for a few minutes before joining the rest of the group. Okay, some other things to expect that we might see is that literal thinking. They have a very difficult time with jokes and sarcasm and phrases that we might say that just don't make sense to them, that they take very literally. So if you get that confused look from a camper, know you just said something that just really did not make sense to them. We can think of things that we say, it's raining cats and dogs, and I think all of you could sit there and think of some, and also there's probably some slogans and sayings that you say within your camp program that may be confusing to a child. So talk through that with them, and those abstract ideas, again, teamwork, well, what does teamwork look like? You're going to need to tell your group and tell that child, this is what I'm expecting of you. All those things at camp, don't assume that they know what you're talking about. We may see motor and coordination problems, and so we may need to break down that skill again to help that child. Okay, so in planning for some of these characteristics we may see, again, let's give them those step-by-step instructions. I'm reminded of a mom who told me that, her child was on a baseball team, but he stood in the outfield and they said, put your glove on. And he put his glove on his head, on top of his head. And, she said everyone laughed like they thought he was being silly, but she said, I knew as his mom, he literally thought, okay, this is kind of shaped like a hat. It must go on my head. And she said, it reminded her of every skill needed to be broken down, even what you do with equipment that you're using, to teach your child. Your glove goes on your hand, and then you use your glove to catch the ball. And so all of these things at camp, don't take for granted that they know what they're supposed to be doing. And whatever your program is focused around, you may need to provide those step-by-step instructions. Here, there's a visual pictured for us about bowling, and it lists out the steps of putting on bowling shoes, wait your turn, get bowling ball, roll the ball down the lane, and there's a picture that is with it. Again, being visual learners, people with autism do really well with concrete information, and pictures provide that rather than us just telling them, giving those verbal directions. That kind of gets lost in translation. So let's give them very clear instructions. We can write it down, provide a picture with it, especially for children who may not be readers yet. Let's give them those pictures. Provide an adult or peer partner. This can work great at camp. As the week goes along, many times there is a camper there that might be that nurturing girl in the group that just wants to take care of everybody. We know that we always have one or two campers like that. She would be a perfect peer partner to use for a child if she feels comfortable or he feels comfortable, to help them when it comes time to participate in an activity. And then just target one skill at a time. Again, this goes back to the expectations the parents have. If you know that they just said, man, we would love for Josh to be able to kick the ball. We've been working on that. It would help him be able to participate with his siblings better when they're playing in the backyard. Then when his camp group rotates to that station, that's the skill he's working on. And so it gives you some flexibility that Josh may not be ready to stand in line, and then have a place in the outfield. And and he may not be ready for all the parts of the game, but he is ready when it's his turn to stand at the plate and to practice kicking the ball. And that is success for him. That is what he did for that day. He may do that every day of the week for camp, but the parent is so pleased. That's what they've asked you to work on. Your staff can be excited because he's mastered that skill. So again, going back to that planning, focus on that skill that the parent has said, really matters to them. Okay, moving on. Some other resources for camp that you may find is there can be difficulty when you rotate activities. That's a transition. The schedule will help with that, but something else that may help is occupying the camper with a job or object to carry. This may sound like a small thing, but I can promise you, you may avoid a lot of behaviors by simply having this in place. When it comes time to finish one activity and move to the next activity, which, is common, that's what you do at camp all day. You're rotating activities or after school in your program. Letting that camper know, this is coming. We've got 2 minutes left, and you point to their schedule to remind them what's coming next. Giving them an object to carry that they can take to the next activity will really help. In the school system, we call it a transition object. So standing in line can be difficult for kids with autism. Everybody may line up, but then somebody forgot their lunch or their coat, and here you are 5 minutes later, you're still standing in line. Well, you can really lose a kid fast, when that happens, because they just run out of patience, and you may encounter some behaviors. So maybe letting the group line up, and then you line up when okay, I think we're about to be moving. We're going to catch this. We're going to line up. And then maybe you give them their lunch to carry. That's easy. You may give them paintbrushes or something that, if they're going to the art station next, something that they're carrying that's going to get them to that next station. It may be a broom because they're going back to their room and they're going to do the end of the day jobs. It might be a clipboard. Sometimes a clipboard is just the easiest and handiest. That maybe they hand this clipboard to the teacher in the next room. They may need just a ball to squish in their hands. So, but like I said, don't miss this. This will help you so much, and it will get you from one place to the next place much easier than if the child is not occupied with doing anything. Okay, something else at camp that may come up is there are always, behaviors that may surface. I would encourage you to identify a reward for a camper to earn. The parent can help you with this. Again, talk through that with them before camp starts. And you establish, the parent will help you with this, or you may also observe this the first day. A camper may be able to make it through the whole day of camp and get that reward at the end of the day. Or they may only be able to make it through the morning, the first 2 hours of camp, and then they need that reward. So that's really important to observe. Some kids, if they're in your program for the whole summer, they may be able to work up to making it to Friday to receive their reward. So it's okay if this is different from everyone else in the group, because truthfully, the rest of the group may not know that this child has their own individualized reward. But it's really important, and it's going to help you have some control over these behaviors before they start. It allows you to be proactive rather than reactive. We all want to try to avoid being reactive in situations with behaviors, because we know it's reached that point where the child is having a meltdown, and our options are limited, truthfully. So let's identify that reward. Let's put it on their schedule so they know we've got 2 activities at camp. then we get that 10-minute break for the reward. That reward might be time on their iPad that they bring or their electronic device. That reward might be sitting on a beanbag chair and flipping through a book, in a quiet room. That reward might be vacuuming. One time at camp, we had a child, and man, it was awesome because it really helped us out, at the staff, but he loved to vacuum. So that was really appropriate and useful. And so his reward was every 2 hours when he made it through an activity, he had a break and he vacuumed 2 or 3 classrooms, and then two more activities would pass, and then his reward would be to vacuum again. And then at the end of the day, he had that reward again. So it may be something you're used to. It may be something uncommon like vacuuming, but this will be huge in giving you something to work with this child and increasing that compliance. Okay, so also let's be mindful about how we schedule their day. And even if this takes a little bit of modifying, like I said, it is worth it because it's okay if other kids can handle their camp schedule. And so let's leave their schedule the same, but a child coming with autism, you might have to modify that a little bit, and that's okay. They are still participating. They're meeting their goals and expectations that the parent wanted. So you may need to schedule their day to where we don't want to put all the awesome activities first, and then there's nothing else you can use for the rest of the day as leverage with the child. That will be frustrating to you. And so we want to spread out those rewarding activities for that child to help them get through the day. So, that may mean scheduling art first, and then planning for, movie time after that art activity, scheduling sports outside that, it's not many of our kids' favorite thing to do, due to those difficulties with coordination and motor problems. So getting them to do something active outside with their group, schedule snack or lunch right after that. And so it gives you leverage. It will help you tremendously with that compliance. Because like I said, if we use up snack and movie time and break time, and then we have to get through 3 more activities that are not the child's favorite, it's going to be a struggle. Okay, let's think about, there are going to be attention-seeking behaviors that come up. That might be inappropriate language. That might be laying on the floor when everyone else is participating, or has been asked to come to the group. Some great responses to use quickly are to try to ignore. And then you want to praise the other kids for their appropriate behavior. Sometimes if we ignore and a child has decided to lay on the floor or crawl under the table, and it appears attention-seeking, we can ignore and then quickly give out snacks to everyone else who's sitting or, doing the appropriate behavior. Or you quickly maybe change the activity in the room to something that the child likes. And this is a fast and easy way to get that child back in with the group, really without you having to say, get off the floor, or we're not going to be under the table. You need to get out from under the table. Just by quickly increasing your praise for the other kids, they're going to want that attention, and they may jump right off the floor, or they don't want to miss that snack that you just pulled out, and they'll jump off the floor and rejoin the group. Distracting is a great way to redirect attention-seeking behaviors. Sometimes children may talk about inappropriate things in their group. They may use inappropriate language. If you can distract them, rather than our initial reaction being, we're not going to talk that way, saying no and being stern. Let's try some of these strategies first because they work better than responding the other way. And so let's change the topic. Let's quickly think of what they like. Who's your favorite character in Star Wars? You didn't give attention to the inappropriate language they were using, but you changed the topic very fast, and they usually will join you, and you've distracted away from that, from that awkward situation. Of course, there always may come a time where they do need to be separated from the group. If you've tried these strategies and it's just not working, and they're kind of taking over the classroom, or the other kids are distracted and offended a little bit, it's time to take a walk. Remove that child, take a walk. Let's go take a walk. Let's go take a break. If the child won't move out of the classroom, then the other adult just take the rest of the group. Come on, guys, we're going to take a bathroom break. Saying something like that can give you that option that you need when you don't want the rest of the group to be offended, maybe by what the child is saying. And you need that quick separation, and distracting's not working, redirecting's not working. So just take him for a walk, or take the rest of the kids for a walk. Remove them from the situation. This goes the same with, whining. Some kids may whine. They may have a negative attitude. If you can ignore and redirect as much as you can, I think they'll quickly find at camp, hey, nobody's listening to me. I'm not going to get any attention for the way that I'm acting. So keep that in mind in your camp groups. Okay, I've just given us some pictures that are really cool, that we know work very well with children with autism. They are visuals, and the first one, it says punch card, and this is really cool. We've used it a lot in camp environments. You might laminate it, and you put in the middle a picture of what the child is working for. And really around the four corners, you can add more pictures on there. It might be their schedule, but it also may be behaviors, staying quiet, not touching others. And so we're giving them that visual of, this is what is expected of you today. All right, this is what we're working for. And you really just hole punch those stars. And you might make it smaller. We may truthfully know, okay, this child is not going to be able to get 30 stars, but you might make that smaller. But it does allow you to give attention to and reward all those small ways that the child is acting appropriately. It might be, I love how you're sitting in your chair. They get that punch. I love how you're standing in line. I love how you smiled at that friend. That made her feel so happy today. And you're rewarding all of those small appropriate behaviors. So this is huge to use, and it's easy. You can keep it in your pocket. You keep it around your lanyard, around your neck. And I want to point out that Spectrum, we can help you with all of these visuals. If you say, man, I just don't have time to look these up, and I don't even know where I would start, online to find some of these visuals. That's what we're here for. Spectrum not only provides these trainings, but then we do ongoing consultation. And we've worked with a lot of camp programs, and you say, this is what we need, and we bring it to you. We make it for you. We'll spend time at your camp, however long you need us with that child, to show you how to use these visuals. So keep Spectrum in mind as a huge resource, that you are not alone. We don't want you to feel the pressure of implementing these things on your own. The next picture just gives us another great visual schedule where the child checks off each thing when they have finished. Here's some more visuals. The first one is, the rules of the group. And I'm telling you, truthfully, this will not only benefit the child with autism, but you will really love using these with your whole camp group, because every child needs these reminders. And remember what we said, the statistics tell us that there may be a child coming to your program that the parent has not given you much information on, but they would really benefit from these visuals. Walking down the hall, holding these signs that say stop, holding a sign that is a quiet, do not disturb. Another visual, this one tells us, what are the rules, playing on the playground. Maybe you've written these out and a child needs to go over this script before you head out to the playground. Don't miss this because, again, they don't pick up on these cues on their own, so they need us to help them with these scripts to get them prepared. Okay, the last few slides continue with dealing with difficult behaviors. We want you to know that you really are a problem solver, and it's a great way to look at every situation because we know that behaviors equal communication, especially if you have a child coming that's nonverbal or may not say much at all. We really have to be those problem solvers to step back from the situation. Try not to let our emotions get out of control as far as being frustrated. Um, Step back from the situation and try to determine what is really going on. I know at camp, this example is great with this, that a child started to become aggressive and he was nonverbal and in his camp group and would try to kick or turn over chairs if someone came near him. And so we moved the rest of the group out of the room and just was trying to give him a break. But it took us a good 15 minutes to finally go to the other classroom, find his backpack, pull out his lunch, and bring that to him. And that's what it ended up being. He was hungry. It was about 10:30, so it was still a little bit before lunch was going to take place. But this is what, and we talked to his mom later, and we all decided on, man, that was what he was trying to communicate to us. He was hungry. He had not yet learned, an appropriate way to tell us this. We, on our end, we may not have provided him with pictures or a way to tell us he was hungry. And so, his behaviors got out of control. He got aggressive. He was turning over chairs, and it all went back to he was hungry. He just wanted his lunch, but he didn't have a way to let us know. So I'd encourage you to, in all of those situations, and these pictures at the bottom of the slide kind of remind us, a child may be hungry, a child may be tired. At camp, that's a busy schedule and they may just be tired. And so if they are starting to have aggressive behaviors or behaviors of not joining the group or maybe laying on the floor, just not cooperating, let's think through these things. Are they hungry? Are they tired? Are their clothes comfortable? A lot of times kids with autism, they might have a tag in their shirt or something on their clothes that is bothering them, and it is causing them to be irritated and to act out, and they don't have a way of telling us. And sometimes you'll find they start to take off their clothes, and while we don't want them to do this, constantly at camp, if they take off their shirt and are irritated and then they seem calm, it was probably connected to a clothing item. And parents will tell us all the time, that tag, they may cut off the tags on shirts. So this just reminds us, wow, we have to stop and observe and be a problem solver of what is going on and what may they need. They may feel scared in a new situation. In this last picture of an umbrella, I'm reminded of a child at school that in the afternoons, the principal would say, everyone have a great afternoon. And on the intercom, he would say, make sure you stay indoors or, have your umbrella when you go out because the weather report says it may rain. This really stressed out this child because he had a huge fear of lightning, thunder, rain. So anyone even talking about the weather really affected his behaviors. And this just gives us a great example of at camp, if it's storming outside or if someone even mentions, it might rain this afternoon, we better go ahead and go outside right now. This can trigger behavior in a child. And so these just give us great examples of being that problem solver. Okay. And lastly, you may have some behaviors that do take on the form, of being more aggressive. They may, have the potential of causing harm towards other campers or causing harm to the camper or to volunteers. So we do point out, safety first. In those we hope that by using a lot of these strategies, ideas we've given you today, that those are ways to be proactive. Many times you will avoid getting yourself into a situation with aggressive behaviors by being proactive. But we also know that there may be times at camp that you are in that position of being reactive, of you find yourself reacting, of how to react to a child that is being aggressive. We want to protect the child. So if a child is being aggressive within his classroom, we would encourage you to remove the other kids from the room. It's going to be really hard to move that child. If the child is already in a safe place, like a classroom, we want to leave him there. Let's move the rest of the group, have another adult take them out of the room to do another activity. And that takes away instantly, that possibility of harming another child, another camper. I would encourage you to have bean bags at your camp program. You can quickly grab a beanbag chair and put that around the child. Again, moving in a way so that you are protecting yourself as an adult. If a child is turning over chairs, we want to have as least contact as possible, but you can move those chairs away. You can slide a table away from the child, and provide that beanbag chair close to them and direct them to it if they will allow you to do that. And then, if you may have someone bring a snack into the room, and you just calmly set that off to the side again, and just in case, that would be a distractor to help bring them out of that meltdown, or if they are hungry. And then, within a few minutes, it may be a good idea to call a parent just to get some ideas. If you've reached that point where you're afraid they may be in that situation of hurting themselves, let's call the parent. They will be glad that you did. And they can give ideas, or they may say, you know what, he is so tired. It's all right. I'm going to come get him, an hour before camp finishes. And that's okay. That can happen. And so those are some ideas, a pillow, a beanbag chair, a gym pad. If a child is outside and maybe they're banging their head on the concrete, you do want to move them to a safe place. And that's where you may have another adult assist you in moving that child to a safe place inside where they are protected. They are quickly protected. I'd like to point out that it's a great idea and strategy to take a backpack with you wherever you go. You may have it in your classroom, but then when you head out the door, you have it on the playground, you have it outside with you, you have it in the cafeteria of your program. And this backpack has a lot of items in it that you might use if you find yourself in a situation with a behavior. It might have bubbles, it might have a book, it may have a light up toy, a squishy ball. Toy cars are very calming. Legos are very calming. A whiteboard with a dry erase marker. So all of these things are in this backpack, and maybe a snack item. So when you find yourself away from the classroom, it's kind of your bag of tricks. You can pull these out to help distract the child. If they're on the ground, you may say, come on, I need you to hold this, or hey, look, hold this for me, and we're going to walk back to our room. It provides you with tools that you can use right in a situation, rather than having that feeling of, oh my goodness, everything's back in the room and I don't have anything to use with this child. We're out here on the playground. So that's a great and easy thing to do. Have a backpack with you to take with you wherever you go for the purpose of that child, so you can pull those things out to get you out of a situation with some difficult behaviors. I'd like to point out, if you have a child that runs away from a group, this can be a big safety concern, especially if you're beside a busy road. Parents will usually let about this behavior. And I would just say, never let your guard down as a staff. A child might have not shown this behavior, but on day 4, you realize, you look up and he's not with the group. And so just always be aware. Don't let your guard down, so that you don't find yourself in an emergency situation. But if a child does run away from the group, the best thing to do, the most practical, is to call out another adult's name to help you. You don't want to chase after this child and it just be you and them. They are fast, and you know what they love? It turns into a game to them, and they love that you are chasing them, and they will always outrun us, I assure you. So call out another adult to help you. This way, the other adult can go in a different direction. So you may be following the child, but this other adult can get out in front of the child, maybe if it's in a parking lot. And this is such a great safety plan to keep in mind, because again, you don't want to find yourself by yourself out in a parking lot and no other adult knows that you need help. So if a child takes off from a group, call out another adult's name, and then it will be, you will not be alone. Be aware of doors, be aware of closing doors, be aware of where your camp group goes, and just keep this in mind. Self-injurious behaviors, we already hit on that. A child, if you notice, let's get them to a safe place. And if they already are in a safe place, we want to put something soft under them, like a gym mat or a beanbag chair, to keep them safe. And then we do want to call the parents to let them know what's going on. And they can remember, parents are the experts, and they want to know, they already know that you love having their child at camp, and they want to know if a situation has come up like that. If a child may be biting their hand, sometimes we see this in frustration or a sensory coping strategy, that they may be biting their hand, but you may notice it's bleeding and you're not able to distract. Let's call the parent, get some ideas, and see what they want us to do. And then aggression, we already talked about that, but to keep yourself safe, keep the other campers safe, and try to distract with some quick ideas. But again, make that phone call to get a plan from the parents of what they think might help in that situation. Again, you make that original phone call before camp starts, but it's wonderful to stay in touch with parents, because they have such a wealth of knowledge, and they can tell you, oh, I know what it is. He didn't sleep at all last night. He's been up since 1 a.m. And then it explains why they've had a difficult day at camp. So you never can talk enough to the parents. I'd like to encourage you, as we finish, that parents want to know that communication. So when they pick up their child every day, please, let's tell them all the positive things that we can think of about their child. They already know that their child may talk too much, about that specific interest. They already know that their child may make funny noises, or may, flap their hands, or may fall on the floor, have difficulty with transitioning. I promise you, they already know these things, so we don't even have to bring that up. That's not new to them. And they know that maybe their child is not yet toilet trained, and so us talking about that is just a waste of time. What we want to focus on is the positive things that happened at camp. And you have to think about, and it's also a way to brag on your awesome program and your awesome staff, because you do so many wonderful things during the day with this child. But he goes home and he doesn't tell his parents about it. And especially if it's a nonverbal child, you are their only source of communication back and forth. So the parent wants to know, if they talked to another friend at lunch, if they stood in line, if they answered a question and raised their hand, if they read, if they played on the swing set during recess, every single thing, you have to consider it a big deal because those kids may not do those things at home. A lot of times parents will say, he never does that for me. I cannot believe he did that at camp. And so they are so excited. So please, please, at the end of every day, um, send a note home. I know it takes time, but send a note home of something great, an accomplishment they had that day. If you're able to have that face-to-face communication to let them know with a smile on your face how the day was. There's always going to be frustrating things that happen during that day, but I know that you can find one positive thing that happened during that day of camp, and that's what we want to share is that one positive thing that they did, and that's when it's worth it, and that the parent just doesn't get that anywhere else. And so I encourage you to remember that and focus on that during your camp day of communicating with the parent. And also, getting some notes from the parent. You also let them know you want to know what happened during that morning, what's happening during the week to help explain, things that may come up at camp. And as we conclude, we like to laugh and we say, if you've met one child with autism, you've met one child with autism. And so that shows us and reminds us that every child is different. And you may see a lot of these characteristics we talked about today, but truthfully, you may see some brand new things that come up with each child that is individualized to what they're working through, what they need, what their goals are. And every child is unique and different. And so I'd like to remind you that Spectrum provides these trainings, and we are so excited that you've chosen to partner with us and that you have the willingness to open your camp program to every family that lives in your community. And Clarity's is Spectrum, is president of Spectrum, and she shares with us and reminds us, the difference between a camp program equipped to work successfully with children with autism is about 2 hours of training. And you'd be amazed at the difference that can make. And truthfully, that's really not a lot of time to invest that can make such a difference. She says you cannot underestimate the payoff for a relatively small investment of time in learning to include, teach, and manage a child with autism. And we know and we believe an entire family's life can be impacted. And so we want to come alongside you to support you after today's training, for future needs that you have. We do not want you to feel alone in caring and supporting a child with autism. So please take advantage of Spectrum. This last slide, I'd like to point out that there are follow-up trainings on Spectrum's website. There are sensory strategies, a webinar. There's behavioral strategies, maybe for some more intense behaviors you may encounter. Again, we provide consultation. We will come to your camp program and help you implement some of these visuals and examples today. We thank you for tuning in with us, and we look forward to partnering with you in the future.
Thank you, Nan, for such a powerful webinar and providing this information to us. This concludes today's webinar.